Bhedlindaba Mkhize. Now he's the founder of the Umsamo Institute. He joins me now. Doc, a very good evening to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. I want to talk about the burial process and the role of the royal family. For many who don't understand Zulu culture, what is likely to happen in this particular instance?
Thank you very much to the viewers, as well as thank you very much to the studio. First of all, what we have to understand about the burial processes in an African context is that it consists of two things. It consists of isiko, something that is done by the whole nation, like for instance, like in Zulus. And then we have something called usiko, which is particularly for that particular family. Now, why I'm mentioning that and starting my conversation with that one is because King Zwelithini, he is the one who said in his family, I'm going to do something that my forefathers and my father kaBhekuzulu never done. That in my family, the burial, whoever that passes away, will have to be buried at night. It has happened to two of his sons, his late sons, and hence it is actually happening to him. So we must understand that first of all. And then the second thing is that in our tradition is that people who actually take the forefront, it's men most of the time, and then women to follow behind and so on. Not because of undermining them. No, it's not about that. Now, with him, as we know that he is coming from a tradition and a culture of the warriors, of Amabuto and so on. Hence, I think that is why the decision was that it must only be male people who must attend the funeral. Now, I want to mention something that was happening the whole day today. When you view the whole thing that was happening on TV, was that it was the Virgin Ladies Izintombi that was leading Mabuto. Why? It was because of cleanliness. Because they are still clean and they haven't touched by a man. And therefore, why we was doing that? Because that was the signifying that we have, in other words, when he arrives to his ancestors, nothing must disturb him. He must be as clean as possible. Hence, maybe he gets touched by male. Now, we all know that women, they go to their so-called menstruation and so on. And our belief is that it makes them maybe dirty for that particular period. Maybe that is the case. But what we're actually going to expect here is that as they actually mentioned that he must be buried at night, so it will be male only. Somebody else asked me in one of the interviews today, said, why particularly at night? We must remember, we have, okay, the king is a person during his time, any king. He lives through his nyanga, he has got ingeles, he has got his own mutis and whatever to make him so. But remember, those people can be sorcerers later. So in other words, abathakathi bakhona. We have to protect ilibalake. We have to hide where he has been buried, and then maybe it can be said. Maybe it can be said where it's lying after maybe 6 months or a year, whatever. But for the time being, we have to protect that for the purposes of the family and for the purposes of the nation at large.
Well put there, Doctor. It sums up a lot, in particular, for the viewer who may not understand Zulu culture quite well. But I also want to talk about the legacy here, in that, there were a number of cultures, if I may, that, the departed king had also revived after his coronation. I want to talk a bit about that and how significant that is if you look at His Excellency's legacy. His Majesty, I beg your pardon.
You know, he played a significant role as a king. For instance, let's start back from Shaka. During the times of King Shaka, it was unfortunate that Shaka was actually assassinated. And then when Dingan took over from Shaka, he took over from hard times. And he had to fight with the Boers, with the divided Zulu kingdom, which was led to his defeat, and so on and so on. And Bande, who ruled for over 30 years, what actually happened was that even the kingdom could not be brought together, but Shaka was trying to conquer all the small nations so as to create the Zulu nation and so on and so on. And then now, if you look into Kejwayo, sadly enough, is that colonization was very aggressive at that time, and it was worse. And now, Zulu, who succeeded Kejwayo in 1884, who ruled until his death in 1913, you will find that he was actually operating during the trying times and during the Bambatas, the poll tax revelation, the British sentenced him to St. Helena, and all those kinds of things. Now, the king, first of all, when he came to power during the apartheid times, where actually there was the racist state, and determined to punish any genuine agitation for a united, democratic, and non-sexist South Africa. So those were difficult times. And at the same time, he came to power where most of the Zulu people lost their traditions, lost their customs, lost some of their beautiful things.
Yeah.
And what we are trying to say here is that he took over now not as a king per se, but as a head of state, not of army, but at the head of the Zulu people, a nation. Understand that, a nation only in cultural terms and not really in political terms. In short, today there is no Zulu nation in democracy, and the apartheid state only promoted Zulu nationalism as a way of dividing. It was not the recognition of political or military territory and independence. So he had to be that is actually overlooking for everyone in this country. Remember this. Just take an instance where the foreigners were being beaten, being killed. He immediately and said, it is not about being a foreigner in this country or being whatever, but it is about us as African people, us as black. So I am here not only to unify the Zulu-ness, but I'm here to be an ambassador in the world and the peacemaker, and also show the people who are we. That is why he brought back the issue, he brought back Umhlanga, he brought back the so-called all the embracement, as you heard from the previous speaker that was actually talking ahead of me in the very same time.
And I recall that time, Doctor, when South Africa was at a very heightened time of xenophobic violence as well. And having visited the hostels at the time and speaking to his Induna at the time, once His Majesty had spoken, everyone would listen to the instruction that he had given. And I guess this is going to have to be, I won't say a challenge, but where whosoever then takes over the reins would obviously need to have, that kind of attitude towards solving some of the challenges that or assisting South Africa with some of the challenges that it experiences where he can.
I think it's not only a matter of solving the challenges, but you'll have to go beyond.
Yes.
Remember, the king was in his 70s. Now, the challenge in our society now is about young people. The young people wants to listen to the young voice. I think whenever who will be his successor will be amongst his sons, I'm not too sure, but a young person. A person who will understand the 21st century issues as per his father, who had to understand the past from King Shaka up to today. But the successor now, his son, will have to understand what is actually happening today. Why am I saying that? Look into our young people today. Look at our we have lost our culture, we've lost our tradition, we've lost our things. We find that at shops, we are addressing our children in English, whereas the English-speaking people or African-speaking people, they will never address theirs in our own mother tongues. All those sorts of things. Even our own government have neglected the bringing back and the celebration of our cultures and traditions through their arts and culture department, to me, which is a waste of money and energy, because it hasn't done nothing. So therefore, the king who will take over, he must actually fight not only the politicians, the government, and say, why are we neglecting what we are, and also so that the next generation will leave those things.
Very outspoken on issues of land, and I guess that is part of what that legacy will be. And also, whosoever then does take over would also need to be, like you say, involved in issues of young people and identify with the challenges of South Africa today and have voice pertaining to that. Is that correct?
When you are touching about land, you are touching me on a very, very hard spot. Now, I always say to people, when you are crying about bringing back the land, what is it that you are talking about? Are you talking about the land itself, the soil? or are you talking about the wealth that was lost with the land? When a white man took the land, he didn't only take the land, he took the wealth in terms of, one, our ancestors' graves where they were lying. He took the land where our cattle were grazing. He took the land where we could do the plowing and so on. For instance, if you are telling me that you are bringing back Umlambo Munye, are you bringing me back the graves of my ancestors, their spirits, where they are lying? How many pieces of land have been brought back to the people today, but they are renting them out to the very same white people? Because of the lack of understanding. My argument is that let's not politicize the issue of the land. Let's make it be a spiritual issue. Let's make it be part of ourselves. In our African isiZulu, we speak of inxuluma kumbe inxiwa. Mawalahla inxiwa, when you lost the origin where your forefathers were, you are lost completely. Hence, black people are lost today because we lost the wealth. That is why it's the other races or nations that are actually wealthier than us, because we lost impande, of which I think the challenge of the successor will have to think better than anyone else in terms of the land. The Ngonyama Trust, I think, that was the understanding. So therefore, if you are giving a young man a farm, say, I am empowering this young man, are you bringing him back the land? Not at all. Where is the wealth? Our land was the wealth. To me, what we must mourn about is the wealth that was carried by the land, not only the bare land or the thin land.
Dr. Bhedlindaba Mkhize, thank you very much. I wish we had more time to look at this. The founder of the Umsamo Institute, thank you very much indeed for joining us on The Full View this evening.